Hi folks, my name is David and this is my portable 2 horsepower 2-stage dust collector that I built over the period of a long weekend or 12. It is similar to a lot of the builds you'll see on YouTube, but different in what I think is a couple of important ways that I will show you. So let's start with the parts that it took to build this, the major components. First of all, this motor and the blower below it is from a Harbor Freight 2 horsepower dust collector. I think it cost me about $150. I bought it for the same reason everybody else chooses this, and that is you can't buy the motor for $150 anywhere else. So out of the Harbor Freight, that's all I really used out of the Harbor Freight single stage was the motor and the blower assembly. Inside the blower assembly, I replaced the impeller with a Rikon impeller that's bigger. I think it was $118 shipped, and it fit like a glove, and it definitely improved the vacuum. It really was a big improvement. The blades face the other way. It doesn't seem to matter. It works really well. The third piece that I bought was this WIN environmental filter. It was $250 or thereabouts. It's a big pleated filter, allows the system to breathe really well, yet it captures the fine particles. So that's the third piece. The fourth piece is the part that really makes it different from most that I've seen. Most people use an Oneida Cyclone. This had just come out, and it is the Grizzly Growler. And I liked it. The main reason I chose it is that tube at the bottom that goes up behind this and mounts here. And what that does is it equalizes the pressure at the bottom of the drum. So you can use a, you can't see that. So you can use a bag. So when you're done and it's dirty, you can just close the bag and throw it in the trash. I've always thought it strange to collect all of this dust only to create a giant dust event by emptying it. Sort of defeats the purpose. So I was pleased. I really wanted that feature, and at the time, I don't know if it's changed, but this is the one unit that had that I was able to find. So using the Grizzly, it's different than the Oneida. It's built differently, and that really dictated some design choices that I think worked out well, but it did make things a bit more challenging. I'll go over those. The Growler costs, I believe, also somewhere around $250. So if you've been adding this up, I think we're somewhere around $750 just for those parts. You add the plywood, bungees, wheels, you add it all up, and if you're thinking about building this to save money, I would say don't bother because I think I easily surpassed $900 building this thing, not including the hours it took to build it. That being said, I love the way it works, and I'll say straight off, I'm very happy with the results. Not only does it collect the dust, but it's pretty quiet too, and let me show you that real quick before I get into some of the design features. So I have this little sound meter app on my phone, and let's give it a whirl and see what this thing sounds like. So it's not too bad at all, and I think it's a lot better than most commercial units if we just look at their sound level rating. Certainly not as loud as my shop vac, and doesn't have the shriek of a shop vac. I think by building a lot of it out of wood, it just dampens that and makes it less of a shriek and a little more pleasant noise. It just strikes me as a hum in the background most often. So the heart of this thing and the central aspect of the design is that instead of using a pipe to go from the blower to the filter, I decided to just build a box, I think we'd call that a plenum, to direct the air from the blower down into the filter. It doesn't restrict any flow, but more importantly for me is I'm a woodworker, not a metal worker, and it was easy to build. And it provides a platform to rest the blower on. I mounted the blower on this front piece, but it really just sits inside this box. To mount the legs, I had some leftover butcher block from a project, and I decided to use bed frame angle iron because it was cheap. I already had a piece. I had to buy one other one from Habitat for Humanity. I think it was 12 or 15 bucks. But anyway, I used that for the legs, and this gave me a place to mount everything. It's pretty big, it's really heavy, and I wanted to make sure it had a steady base so it wouldn't tip over. So I'm happy with that choice, and I do think, like I said, it helps with the sound a little bit. Mounting the filter was an easy task. Just cut a hole and put it up in there. Mounting the Cyclone to the top was a bit of a trick. It wasn't designed to do this. I ended up putting an extra piece of wood here. You can see that I didn't get around to painting. Inside there, I used a flange to connect directly to the top of this piece of the Cyclone, and it required some weather stripping to do that, but it works pretty well. I've never noticed any leaks from this area. The other challenge with the Grizzly is that there's no flexible tubing right here. It's a solid connection down to the drum. So if you think about that, if you mounted it in a situation where the drum just rolled on the floor, you would have no way to empty it because there's no way to lift this piece up. It's all rigid. So what I decided to do was to mount the drum where it rests on a platform that can turn into a ramp. This was the most challenging part of the whole thing, and it worked out for a couple reasons. And I actually never wanted to have these casters directly on the floor, and the reason is because my shop has extension cords on the floor, and it has pieces of wood and all sorts of things that can catch, and I didn't want this giant thing tipping over. But also, one of the knocks I have about the Grizzly is that the metal's pretty thin, and I could just see this rolling and hitting and eventually bending this top piece and losing my seal. I have seen some reviews that were unfavorable of the Grizzly because of the thin metal and because of leaking here. I haven't had any issues with leaking around this joint, although there's only 2 clips to hold it. And I think part of the reason is not only is it, instead of just sitting on the floor and having the pressure of the whole thing pushing this seal down along with these clips, I also have these bungee cords holding this platform up, which gives us an extra push on this, and hopefully will keep the seal nice and tight. It works really well. While we're down here, let's take a look at the bottom of the wind filter. You can connect, they sell kits to connect I believe a 5-gallon jug to it, or pail. I just used a leftover strap piece from the Harbor Freight to hold a piece of trash bag. When we open this thing in a minute, it'll be a bit of a reveal because I've actually never taken this thing off yet. And I've opened this once to get a pencil that the machine sucked up, but other than that, this will be the first time to look at that. You can see also in the back that this platform is hinged on the axle of the back wheels just to keep things simple. So the idea is that to empty it, and I guess why not do it now? My wheel is locked. We'll unclip it then we can just remove these. I cut the bottom of the plywood so it works better as a ramp. And let's take this off. And we will need to, well, I guess we can. There we go. Pretty cool. It's about halfway full. Let me bring the camera a little closer. And I already see something in there that I lost. Nothing too exciting there, except I think I made a couple little pieces to help my little Inca table saw collect dust, and I didn't secure them, and it just sucked them right up. So these pieces I need to secure. I'm not going to empty this yet because it doesn't need it, but let me just show you how this should go back on. Bring it under where it's pretty close. And then we just use the That's simple. All right, like I said, I've never taken this little plastic bag off, and just to review, what this does is it catches any dust that doesn't go down into the big drum or get blown out here. There is a YouTuber, I think it's Unemployed Hillbilly or Unemployed Redneck, and he does a great review of this Grizzly Growler, and he's not pleased with it. Like I mentioned before, he got some leakage out of there, and he had a ton in this bag. His setup was a little different. He was using a 3 horsepower system, a single stage as his source, and didn't build this. So I'm curious to see what I have. I can tell there's some stuff down in there. It just doesn't seem like a whole lot, but let's take a look. I just see myself pinching my fingers on this, so I'm going to be careful. Big reveal. I don't know if you can see that. It's not much. I'm going to roll it up so you can. There's a little right there. But there is maybe, I don't know, a half a cup. So I think it's doing its job pretty well. I've never had another Cyclone to compare it to, but this meets my needs. I can tell you that the power, the vacuum power, doesn't seem to have waned at all. So I'm pretty happy with those results. He does a good review of it, the Unemployed Hillbilly Redneck. So his results are not as good, and I don't really know why. As I said earlier, he may have gotten a lemon, they may all be lemons, and I got the one good one. His 3 horsepower system might affect it a little differently. I'm not really sure, but it doesn't seem to be a problem here. So am I happy with it? How does it work? What would I fix? I am 100% happy with the performance of it. It sucks everything up, including pencils and parts that you leave laying around if you're running it by hand. I added a top outlet, a second vacuum point on my blade guard of my table saw, and that, along with the underneath, is a dust collection accomplishment that I've never had before. It really keeps things clean. It really works well. Regrets, I wish I'd used a better quality of plywood. It's just kind of cheap and looks kind of cheap, but it doesn't affect the performance. I will probably at some point, reaching around and getting this switch turned on is kind of a pain, and I'll either move it to the front of the unit or we'll put a remote on, which I'll probably lose. So my thought is I'll probably just move that switch over to the front. The angle iron, the bed frame, I thought was a really clever idea because It doesn't take up a whole bunch of space and you can still get to the parts, but it's still plenty strong. But it took forever to drill all the holes in this angle iron. There's a lot of holes. It took a lot of time. I actually even bought a drill doctor to sharpen the bits as I went along. Otherwise, I would still probably be drilling holes. But it works great. I'm really happy with it. If anything changes over time about how much I like it or dislike it, I'll probably post another video. Speaking of next videos, my next thing to build on this, I want to build a manifold so I don't have to run around and keep plugging this into different things or turning off ports, but something that'll just allow me to dial in whatever machine is hooked up. But that's it. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts.